Okay, so as someone who's been teaching math for decades, I can tell you right now that this may very well be the most common math mistake made. All right, so we have this problem, 10 divided by 2 times 5, and indicating that doing multiplication is wrong. In other words, if you start this problem and you start with multiplication, well, this is wrong. And what you need to do here is start with division. That is correct. But why is that? Well, what we're talking about here is something called the order of operations. And most people learn the order of operations with this acronym right here called PEMDAS. Now, again, the most common math mistakes that I have seen typically come from order of operations errors, okay? And even students that are in algebra or more advanced math courses, excuse me, still make these types of errors. So you have to really focus and pay attention. And what I got for you here is kind of a compilation video of problems that I have posted on YouTube. Now, I'm actually going to solve this problem first, but we're going to be looking at other basic level math problems. We're going to be practicing the order of operations and really learning PEMDAS, right? Which, of course, is an acronym that you need to follow the or to basically, solve a math problem in the correct order. But as we progress through these basic problems, we're going to get into some more interesting and advanced or more challenging math problems later in this video. So feel free to advance the video to sections or parts that interest you. And if you need help in math, go right to the end of the video. I'm going to give you some course recommendations on where you can, really strengthen your math skills, whether that be in algebra, basic math. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and just tell you, you can find links to those courses in the description of this video. All right, now if you know why this is right, in other words, why are we doing division first and why shouldn't we do multiplication first? Well, go ahead and put that into the comment section. But let's go ahead and get into this first problem, 10 divided by 2 times 5. And of course, we're going to just be practicing a lot of the order of operations, but I can assure you that this isn't a waste of time, all right? You really, really have to get this down. Again, even students that think they understand the order of operations still make a lot of errors. So you want to practice a wide variety of problems. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this problem right now. So here's the problem, obviously, right? We have 10 divided by 2 times 5. Now, what makes all the difference in the world is the order we do this problem, right? Do we do division first and then multiplication, or should we do multiplication first and then division? Okay, because obviously, whatever order you select, okay, is going to create a different answer, right? So we need to understand what is the correct order to do this problem, and that's where this little acronym comes in right here. And again, we're talking about the order of operations. But what is an operation? We're not talking about an operation at the hospital, like, hey, I need my knee, replacement, and then my hip replacement, and then throw in a shoulder replacement. Lastly, no, we're not talking about those type of operations. We're talking about these type of operations, mathematical operations. So a math operator is things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, even things like powers. Okay, so these are things that we can do with numbers, right? So mathematical operations. These are basically the main ones we need to understand. But let me go ahead and explain this acronym here. Okay, once we understand this acronym, this is basically our set of directions in terms of, hey, follow this acronym to apply the proper order of operations when you're faced with simplifying what we would call a numeric expression, right? We got a problem, it has numbers in it and a bunch of different type of operations. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through this. So the first thing here is P. Now P stands for parentheses or a grouping symbol. So for example, if I had a problem like this, 2 times 2 times parentheses 7 minus 1 plus 10, okay, squared, something like along this lines. The P stands for parentheses. So if you see parentheses, you have to do what's inside the parentheses first. Okay, so you always look for parentheses. Now, in this particular case, we don't have any parentheses, so you just kind of constantly scan this little acronym just to kind of see what you have. So sometimes you have parentheses what's inside parentheses. Let me show you that real quick. So let's suppose I had 8 minus 10 times 3, and I had this inner parentheses, and then of course you have outer parentheses, so you would go to the inner parentheses first, right? So that's what P is. And of course, again, that's parentheses or grouping symbols, brackets like these type of brackets or squiggly brackets. Okay, so that's what the P stands for. Now, E stands for exponents. Effectively, that's powers. Okay, so if you see things like 2 to the third power along those lines, that's what you want to address next. Okay, now the biggest source of confusion, and I've been teaching math for decades, is the following. Okay, so this is pretty easy to understand. Parentheses, do your parentheses, start from the inner parentheses first. If you see powers, address those. This is the biggest source, and it's really this right here, this part of the acronym. So again, this is, let me just read this to you. This is parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Now, a lot of students think, and it's really not their fault because I don't think textbooks do or emphasize this well enough. Okay, that's just my opinion. Of course, I could be wrong, but of course, a lot of students make this error. So, obviously there's confusion about it. But most people think that you're going to do this in a strict left to right order. In other words, what you see from the left-hand side, you're just going to go to the right-hand side. You're going to do that in that exact order. In other words, you're always going to do multiplication, all right, before division. And that makes sense. And then, of course, you would do addition before subtraction. However, that's not the way this works. Okay, that's not the way it works. Okay, so how does it work? Well, it works this way. You're definitely going to do the parentheses, as I described, and you're definitely going to do the powers. However, you are going to work from left to right. But when you get to the multiplication division part and addition and subtraction part, what you're going to do is whatever you see comes first from left to right. So in other words, if you have division, then multiplication, because we're going from left to right, then you're going to do the division first. So this is like one group, and this is like another group. So if you have multiplication, then division, then of course do multiplication first, then division. But if you have division, then multiplication, you are going to do it this way, okay, in this particular order. And it works the same thing for same way for addition and subtraction, right? So this right here is a widely confused part of the order of operations, okay? So if you made this error, I'm happy you made this because you won't make this again. You'll be like, oh, now I get it. So let's go ahead and apply the order of operations now. Pretty easy stuff. So here is our problem. Okay, so anytime you're faced with like a numeric expression, and you'll get better at this through practice, you want to be thinking to yourself, okay, PEMDAS, right? You're just going through this little kind of acronym, and there's a little saying that goes along with this. It's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That's really, really famous. Probably your grandparents were saying that way back in the 50s, 40s, 60s, whenever they may have been in school. But pretty common phrase, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So the first thing is you're looking for parentheses. Well, there's clearly no parentheses there. So you move on to the next thing. Now I'm going to say, all right, are there any powers, exponents? Nope, don't see any of those. So now I'm thinking to myself, multiplication and division. I'm not going strictly to M, okay? Because if I did, I would go right here, right? I would go 10 divided by 2 times 5 is 10. And of course, that's going to give me the wrong answer, which is 1, okay? So you want to be thinking in terms of a group. So multiplication and division, and now we're scanning. Do I have multiplication and division? Well, of course I do. I have division and multiplication. So now I'm asking myself, which is first from left to right? Well, it's this, okay, this part of the problem. I have division before multiplication from left to right, so I'm going to do this. So 10 divided by 2, which of course is 5, and we have 5 times 5. That's the only thing that's left to do, which of course is 25. Okay, so we're talking about what I said is the order of operations. Now, in mathematics, we have these things called mathematical operators. It's basically what we can do with numbers. So let's say I had 2 and 7 What could we do with those two numbers? Well, you can add them, you could subtract them, multiply, divide. You could even take powers with those numbers. And these things here are called mathematical operations. And these are actually mathematical operators. So in a problem, when we have different mathematical operations, we need to be able to understand, and know what is the correct order to do a math problem where there's different operations. So here we have division and here we have multiplication. Now, it should be obvious that if we just kind of take one order versus another order, a different order, we're going to get different answers, right? So here, if I decide to go, let's see here, I'll just do this first. This looks pretty easy. 10 times 2, that's 20. Then I have 40 divided by 20, and that answer is 2, right? Which, of course, is one of the answers here. But this is wrong, okay? Now, why is doing multiplication wrong here? Why should I have to do division first? Well, this is why we need to understand the correct order of operations, and we can remember it by this phrase here, PEMDAS, right? This phrase has been around for decades and decades. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure my great-grandparents were even saying this phrase. But to help you remember PEMDAS, and of course this stands for something. I'll explain all this in just one second. There's a nice, lovely little memory aid phrase that goes along with this, and that is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I'll say it one more time. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So I'm not sure what Aunt Sally did, but we thank her for her cool little phrase. Okay, so PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You want to ingrain this into your long-term memory. This is our checklist for the order of operations, and these letters stand for something. Of course, I'm going to explain what they are right now. But before I do that, this checklist goes from left to right. Okay, it's always from left to right. So now let's go ahead and get into what these particular letters stand for. All right, so the P stands for parentheses. Okay, so if you see things in parentheses or brackets, or even these kind of little squiggly brackets like this, these are technically what we call grouping symbols. We're kind of grouping or clustering together some math operations. We can kind of cluster them together or group them together with these symbols, parentheses. So if we see parentheses in a problem, okay, we're going to focus our attention there first. All right, now E is basically powers, okay? So if we have 2 to the third power, that's what E stands for. Now you might be saying, well, E, why don't they just put another P there? Well, that would be kind of confusing, but let's just kind of clarify this. So 2 to the third power, the 3 here is called the exponent, this little 3 here, this part of the power, and this bigger number down here is called the base. So a power, like 2 to the third power, has two parts to it, this exponent and this base. So this E right here stands for exponent, but you can kind of think of this as powers. Okay, so now let's talk about what M, D, A, and S stand for. So you might be thinking to yourself, what does M stand for? Multiplication, D, division, A, addition, and S, subtraction. And you would be correct, okay? That's what M, D, A, and S stand for. So somebody might be saying, well, okay, well, Mr. YouTube Math Man, if you're telling me this is a checklist and it's going from left to right, the next thing on our checklist would be M. So we should do the multiplication here before division, right? So I know a lot of you are like, this guy did this wrong. He doesn't know what he's doing. You're probably like, yeah, right here. I know, because M becomes before D. Nope, nope, nope. That is not the way PEMDAS works. So let's go ahead and clear up this very common place of confusion when it comes to the order of operations. So P first, E second. Now, the next thing on this checklist is M and D, okay? So it's multiplication or division, okay? Multiplication or division, whatever we see first from left to right. So if we see multiplication, then division like this, where we have multiplication first from left to right, we would do it in this order, multiplication, then division. But if we have division, then multiplication, we see division first, okay? So we're going to do this. So this is why we need to do this part of the problem first, okay? So if you got this wrong, do not despair. Don't feel bad. This is a very, very common error when it comes to the order of operations. So that's how M and D work, and A and S, addition and subtraction, work the same way. It's whatever we see first from left to right. Okay, so now that we understand PEMDAS, we can now do this problem pretty easily. So going down here, we're saying, all right, so let's see. Do we have any parentheses? No. Okay, do we have any powers? Don't see any powers there. Boom. Now I'm considering multiplication and division. Do I have any multiplication division? Yes. What do I see first? I see division before multiplication. So we're going to do division first. All right, so now the rest of this problem is going to be basic arithmetic. 40 divided by 10 times 2, pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and take the next step to solve this basic problem. But before we do, I would love for you to take the next step and just subscribe to my channel. Don't even think about it because if you're with me this far into the video, that must mean that you're getting some sort of value out of this. So if you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you can get my latest content. If you're interested in learning mathematics, what I like to pride myself on, or what I try to do, is explain math in a non-textbook way and try to bring you decades of my experience to try to really make learning math as easy as possible, clear and understandable. And I teach from basic to advanced math on my channel. But anyways, back to the problem. So now that we understand the correct order of operations, this is super easy. And so we got 40 divided by 10, that is 4. So now we have 4 times 2. There's nothing more to do in this problem other than this multiplication. So 4 times 2, of course, is 8. Hello, this is John from TC Math Academy, and in this video we're going to practice basic math skills and concepts, and we're going to go ahead and solve this problem here. So we have 3 plus parentheses 12 divided by 4 and parentheses squared times 2. So the objective is to simplify this numeric expression into one number. Now you want to do this problem without the aid of a calculator. I'm not saying using calculators is always bad. You certainly want to use a calculator as a tool, but really what we're trying to do is see if you have these skills and concepts down. And many of you are going to be taking tests and quizzes. You're not going to be able to use your calculator. And unfortunately, a lot of you are probably going to get something wrong here because you don't have one of the most essential basic math concepts and skills down. Okay, now I've been teaching math for decades, and when students get in trouble in math, it's oftentimes because they haven't mastered the basics. But anyways, if you think you could do this problem, put your answer into the comment section. I'm going to show you the correct answer in just 1 second, and I'm going to fully explain this problem step by step. Also, if you need math help with the course you're taking, test prep, or homeschooling, make sure to check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, don't forget to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. Okay, so let's go take a look at the answer. So what is the answer? The answer is 21. Okay, so how'd you do? Well, hopefully you got this right. If that's the case, let's celebrate by giving you a nice little happy face, an A plus, a 100%, and multiple stars so you can brag to your friends and family that yes, indeed, you are an expert in the order of operations. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. That's probably the primary skill that we need to have outside of just basic math skills, right? So I'm assuming that you know how to add, divide, and multiply basic numbers. But what we really have here is addition, division, we have powers, we have parentheses, and we have multiplication. So the way you do this problem, it has to be done in a specific order, because if you don't do it in a specific order, you're going to end up getting another answer other than the correct answer. Now, I think this problem should have been pretty easy for most of you. I'm hoping that most of you out there, at least 75% of you, got this right. But if you got this wrong, I'm glad that you got this wrong. Now, why would I say such a thing? Well, I'm saying that because it gives me an opportunity to clear up any confusion that you had on this problem. So let's go ahead and get into the solution right now. And again, as I indicated, we need to understand what we call the order of operations, okay, outside of just knowing how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, these type of basic number operations. We need to understand, hey, what do I do first? Do I do addition, division, multiplication, that type of thing? Well, this little acronym right here, PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S, is the secret to doing a problem like this, okay? It's just basically a little acronym that describes the proper order of operations. Now, when we talk about this, what kind of operations are we talking about? Well, we're not talking about like, hey, I need to do knee surgery first, and then I got to do a hip replacement next, and then I got to do, shoulder surgery. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about mathematical operations. So, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. These are examples of mathematical operators. Okay, so we have the order of operations, and this tells us, hey, what do we do first? Okay, do we do multiplication, addition, subtraction? So let's go through this acronym real quick and then we'll get into the problem. So the first thing is P, that stands for parentheses. So anything that has parentheses, certainly we have parentheses in this problem, but really the P is more technically what we call grouping symbols. So it could be parentheses like this or brackets and even squiggly brackets like so. So these are examples of grouping symbols, and there's another aspect to when you look at the P for PEMDAS is that we want to work from the innermost parentheses. So let's say you had a math problem, you had some parentheses like this, you had some number stuff going on here, plus 7 brackets like so, plus 3. I would say, okay, what's my most innermost parentheses? It would be this situation, right? So maybe this is like 8 times 2 or whatever. You do this first. Okay, so anyways, I'm kind of quickly going over this. This really justifies like a complete full instruction. Matter of fact, if you want to check out my full material on the order of operations, I'm going to suggest 2 or 3 different courses. I teach this in my pre-algebra and algebra courses. You can find the links to those in the description of this video. But if you need a good, strong, basic math review, check out my Math Foundation course because I get into fractions, decimals, and percent, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so that's the P. So E is what? Well, this stands for exponents, but really it's powers. Okay, so like 2 to the third power. So anything that looks like this where we have an exponent, this little number up in the top right is called the exponent. This big number down here is called the base. The entire thing is called a power. So after we do parentheses, we're going to do powers. And then we're going to do multiplication and division, whatever we see first from left to right, and then addition and subtraction. And we're going to be working from left to right. Now, you're going to want to do a lot more problems other than this one, okay, so you can really practice the order of operations. And math teachers, including myself, love to come up with little tricky situations that confuse students to really test your understanding of the order of operations. So this problem is actually pretty easy. It's almost easy to get right. You can probably guess and get this correct, but there's going to be a lot of other more interesting problems where it's going to challenge your understanding of the order of operations. But again, if you need help with that, check out, I have a ton of additional videos on my YouTube channel, and you can go to my courses as well. Okay, so once we understand this PEMDAS. And by the way, if you want a nice little saying for this, there is a little phrase, and this has been out for I don't know how many generations. Probably your great grandparents probably remember this. It goes, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I'm not sure what dear Aunt Sally did, but please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It's a little mnemonic, little memory aid for PEMDAS. Okay, so now what do we do now? Well, we're going to scan the problem, and we're going to be just kind of going through this checklist. So I'm saying, all right, do we have any parentheses? Indeed, we do. These are some parentheses, so we're going to do what's inside of these parentheses. We only have one set of parentheses, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this first, 12 divided by 4. Okay, so let's just take this one step at a time, and that's really the key to math, is not doing a lot of steps and writing each step, so your teacher can see and you can verify and see that, hey, you're doing this problem in the correct order. Okay, so 12 divided by 3 is what? That is, I'm sorry, 12 divided by 4, excuse me, is 3. So now the problem is 3 plus 3 squared times 2. Don't take 2 steps or 3 steps in one, just one step at a time. All right, so at this point, we have to decide by looking at this, let me just kind of go down here, what to do next. Well, let's look at the P again. Is there any more parentheses? Well, there's a set of parentheses, but there's nothing to do. There's not like 3 plus 1. So if there's nothing to do inside of there's no parentheses other than this one, there's nothing else to do. We're done with parentheses. So let's move on to E. And now we're going to ask ourselves, are there any powers? Okay. Indeed, we have a power right here. This is 3 to the second power. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay. Now, if there were other powers in the problem, you would also take care of those situations at this step. So 3 squared is what? Well, hopefully you have a good understanding of basic powers. 3 squared means 3 times 3, which of course is 9. Okay, so at this point we have 3 plus 3 squared times 2. So the result of 3 squared is 9. So the problem is 3 plus 9 times 2. So hopefully you can see that this is now pretty straightforward. What do we do first? Do we do addition or we do the multiplication? Well, we can go back to our PEMDAS and we can see, oh, there's no more powers. So you're always going to look at multiplication and division as a group. So if there's any multiplication and division, you're going to take care of that, whatever comes first from left to right, before you look at addition and subtraction. So right here, we obviously have multiplication. So we're going to handle that, and then we'll add the result of this to 3. So 9 times 2 is, of course, what? Well, that's 18. And then we're going to have 3 plus 18, of course, is 21. Okay, so even those that are good at basic math can easily make an error in this problem right here. So you got to be very careful and focus and take your time with this problem. But if you're strong in basic math, you should be able to easily figure out the answer without the aid of a calculator. All right, so let's take a look at this problem. We have a bracket, 4 minus 3 squared minus a minus 9 in parentheses, bracket, divided by parentheses, 1 minus 3 and parentheses cubed. All right, so a lot to do here, but hopefully this is not that difficult. But we have a multiple choice question, and let's take a look at our answers. So A is 7, B is negative 1/2, C is 18, and D is 0. All right, so once again, no calculators, but if you can figure this out, go ahead and put your answer into the comment section. I'll show you the correct answer in just 1 second. Then, of course, I'm going to walk through step by step how to solve this problem. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And if you need help learning math, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, let's take a look at this problem one more time because there is a lot to do here. And in math, we call that number crunching. So get your paper and pencil out and definitely take your time with this. The worst thing you can do, even if you are strong in basic math, is just to try to do this problem in like 2 steps, right? Just step by step. And also, this is a great way to kind of, make the most out of this video, because if you get this wrong and you write out each step, you can determine a specific step that you didn't understand or you were confused about and correct that. All right, so again, we have brackets, 4 minus 3 squared minus parentheses, negative 9 parentheses, bracket, divided by parentheses, 1 minus 3 and parentheses cubed. Okay, so let's take a look at the right answer. The correct answer here is B, negative 1/2. All right, now if you got this right, you definitely get a happy face, an A plus, and 100%, and a certificate of excellence for being a overall math superstar in basic math. And that would include things like positive and negative numbers, but particularly you really need to know the order of operations to get this problem right. But there's some other areas in here that can confuse people, like this part of the problem. So if you didn't get this answer, or if you didn't get this problem correct, no worries, we're going to get into it right now. Okay, now as I indicated, if you tried this problem but you kind of, just took a step or two it's going to be hard to determine where you made an error. It's okay not to get a math problem right because learning or making mistakes is part of learning. But what you don't want to do is not know what part of the problem you don't understand. And the only way you're going to improve in math is to write out each step, what you believe is the next correct step in the problem. And a problem like this kind of should have like an ice cream cone shape in terms of the solution, right? So we have the problem, it's like this. We take a step, it's a little bit less work, less work, less work. So you want to have this kind of shape. You don't want to have like this down to this. You're like, hey, where's the work at? All right, so enough said about showing your work being neat and structured, but that is a critical part of being successful in math. Okay, so we have a multiple choice question here. Can these answers really help us determine the correct answer to this problem? Well, not so much, right? If we had like an equation, an algebraic equation, you can use the answers to figure out, whether indeed you did the problem right. You can always check your solutions into an equation, but we don't have this kind of scenario. But the worst thing you could do is leave this like blank on a test or a quiz. So if you're like, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I don't know what to do, well, just take a guess. You might be saying, well, I'm in a mood for a 0 today. Well, that's a great guess. Unfortunately, that's wrong, but at least try. That's the worst thing you could do on any math exam unless you get penalized for the wrong answer. And that can be the case on some exams like the SAT or ACT. You might get like a little bit of a point off if you answer incorrectly. And those type of tests, then you want to think about whether you want to take a guess or not. But in this situation and on most math exams, always, always, always try. Okay, so here, what do we got going on? Well, we have various mathematical operations. So we have division, we have subtraction, we have parentheses, we have brackets, we have powers. So, and over here, well, this is a squared and this is a cubed. So we got a lot going on. So as I indicated, what are the skills that we're going to need to know to solve this problem? Well, one thing for sure is you're going to have to know how to work with positive and negative numbers. Okay, so this is kind of its own separate little chapter or unit when you learn, like middle school math or pre-algebra, certainly like basic algebra. Okay, so if you're not up to speed on positive and negative numbers, well, this is not difficult, but you're not going to be able to understand how to solve this problem. Now, the next thing you need to know is about powers, right? So we have some situations here where we have 3 squared, but this subtraction sign is going to cause a lot of confusion for some of you out there. I'll get to that in a second, but you need to know how to evaluate powers. But this is a squared, and over here is a cubed. And then, of course, we have division, and then we need to know what to do with this negative of a negative. So a lot going on, but in particular, what you need to really be good at is what we call the order of operations. And that brings me to one of my favorite phrases in math is that's called PEMDAS, right? So that's what we have right here. Now this is an acronym. Okay, so these are letters, they stand for something, but effectively this is a checklist so we can always apply the correct order of operations. So in math, things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and even powers, anything we can do with 2 numbers. So if I give you the numbers like 2 and 5, what can we do with those numbers? Well, we can add them, so we can subtract them, we can multiply, we can divide them, we can even take powers. So these are kind of mathematical operations, but depending on the order you take when you do a problem like this, you're going to come up with different values as your answer. Of course, there's only one right answer, and that depends on taking the correct order. Okay, so you got to know the correct order to do this problem. Now that's one aspect of the problem. The other aspect is you got to know something again about positive, negative numbers and powers. But let's go ahead and just first start with PEMDAS. Right, so this is basically a little mnemonic. PEMDAS, a little phrase you can use. Let me actually give you a mnemonic, which is a memory aid, and then I'll tell you what these letters stand for. So PEMDAS. So P is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Once again, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This is how you can remember PEMDAS, this lovely acronym, but this is the secret to the correct order of operations. All right, now this is effectively a checklist. We're going to go from left to right, And let me go ahead and start explaining this right now. Okay, so we're going to start with P. Okay, again, we're going to go from left to right. So what does P stand for? Well, P stands for parentheses, okay? But not just those type of parentheses. It can be brackets as well, or these squiggly type of parentheses. Effectively, this is what we call grouping symbols. So if you have like 2 times 3 minus 1, I can group any two numbers together differently. I could be like, well, I'm going to do this, or maybe I want to group these numbers like this, okay? So grouping symbols definitely affect the outcome in terms of the correct order of operations, so we need to be on the lookout for parentheses or grouping symbols, which include these brackets and this brackets. Now, one thing about parentheses or grouping symbols, oftentimes you have a problem with multiple sets of grouping symbols. So what you want to do is focus on the innermost parentheses and then just kind of work your way out. Okay. All right. So I'll show you more about the parentheses part of PEMDAS here in a second. But let's talk about what E stands for. All right. So E stands for exponent. So let's just kind of recall what an exponent is. So if we have 2 to the third power, this part of the power, this 2, is called the base, and this little top number here to the right, this 3 is called the exponent. So E stands for exponent, so you just basically want to be on the lookout for powers. So again, you're going to start from the left to right, you're going to look for parentheses, and then the next thing you're going to look for is any powers, right, or anything with an exponent. Okay, so the next step is one of the most confused steps of basic math. So you want to pay attention. But before I tell you that, let's just go ahead and talk about what M, D, A, and S stand for. So M stands for multiplication, D stands for division, A stands for addition, and S stands for subtraction. Now, most of you might be saying, okay, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I know what you're going to do. We're going to do all the multiplication next, and then after all multiplication is done, we'll move on to division and then addition and subtraction. And that makes sense, especially the way I'm explaining it, but that's not the way it works. So some of you might be saying, all right, Mr. YouTube Math Man, oh, that's a terrible little expression. I could do better than that. Hold on one second. I just love to kind of throw in these little facial expressions because as a teacher, you get the opportunity to see all types of faces, and you're like, hey, what are you talking about? You just told me this is a checklist from left to right, but now you're telling me something different. Well, let me explain. Okay, so we got PE. Well, the next step from left to right is multiplication or division. Multiplication or division, whatever you see first from left to right. Okay, so if you have multiplication, then division in the problem, and you see multiplication first from left to right, you're going to do that problem first, and then the division problem next. But if you have division first from left to right, and then multiplication, this is the way you do the problem, and addition and subtraction work the same way. It's a group, and you're going to do whatever you see first from left to right. Okay, so that is PEMDAS, and assuming you have some pretty good skills with positive and negative numbers, you should be able to do this problem. So let's go ahead and get into it. And first things first, we have a what we call a numeric expression. We got all these numbers that are trying to express something which is one value, and what we want to do is simplify it, but we know we're going to have to really pay attention to the order of operations. So we got to size this problem up in a way where we can just kind of chip away at it one step at a time. That is very critical when you do math. You got to just take one step and write that step nice and neat and double check and kind of grade yourself as you go. And you definitely want to be on the lookout for making errors. Even if you're good in math, we all make errors. So when you take a step, double check yourself and say, all right, did I make an error? And then once you're confident you did that step correctly, move on to the next step. Okay, so here we have brackets and we have parentheses. So what should we do? Well, effectively, when we look at this PEMDAS, you're like, well, should I start over here and then do this? Well, what we can do is look at this as two problems, okay? So you have a group of numbers over here, okay? So this represents one value. And then you have a group of numbers over here that's being cubed. But in between them, you have division. So the best way to look at this problem is as a fraction. Okay, so this would be the numerator. It's this thing being divided by this. In other words, if you had 4 divided by 7, that's equal to 4 over 7. So it's very helpful to express this problem or to think of it as a fraction where we have a specific numerator and denominator. And let's go and do that right now. Okay, so here is our problem. Let's think of it this way. So we have this one big group. Okay, so all of this is in a group and it's being divided by this group. So effectively, this is the problem. Now, it's good to kind of look at the problem this way because when you have a fraction situation, you can kind of split this fraction up into its own separate problems. In other words, the numerator, what's going on in the numerator, it's like its own world. Okay, you could just focus on the numerator as its own problem, and then down here we have the denominator as its own world. We can just kind of focus on that as its own problem. So what we want to do here as a strategy is to figure out what the numerator is equal to. Get this down to one value, and then we're going to do the same thing with the denominator. And then once we're done with all those steps, we can simplify the fraction. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it right now. And again, we always want to be thinking about the order of operations, PEMDAS. So you kind of can do this problem in parallel. In other words, you can take a step in the numerator and take a step in the denominator, but don't take any more than 2 steps. But effectively what you're doing is 2 problems at the same time. All right, so here we go. We have brackets, right? So these are grouping symbols. Matter of fact, we can write PEMDAS up here, P-E-M-D-A-S. So this P, okay, applies to both the numerator and the denominator, right? So do we have any grouping symbols or parentheses? Yes, indeed we do. We have brackets here. We have parentheses here. So we can do what's inside of the parentheses in the denominator, and then we're going to start working on what's inside the grouping symbols in the numerator. And in the numerator, what do we have? Well, let's go ahead and take the next step. Do we have any more parentheses inside of here? We do. We have parentheses -9, but there's nothing to do inside these parentheses. In other words, we don't have like -9 plus 8 or something like that. So when you have just a number inside of parentheses, that's not something you would take a step with in terms of PEMDAS. Okay, if there was like a mathematical operation here, okay, yeah, of course we would do that. So at this point, it's just this negative number in this parentheses. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. Do we have any powers or any exponents? Of course we do. So we're going to take care of this, and we're going to take care of this first. So let's go ahead and do that right now. But before I show you the answer, this part of the problem will tend to confuse a lot of people. But let's take a look at the steps here. So when we do this, you're going to get -9 in the numerator for that step, and then -2 down here in the denominator. Let's talk about the denominator real quick. So we have 1 minus 3, so that is the same thing as 1 plus a -3. That's equal to -2. Now, if you don't know why that is, matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and give you suggestions right now. I have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel that go over the rules for positive and negative numbers. So you got to know positive and negative numbers, how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Not that difficult, but if you didn't get this right, well, that is, put that on your math shopping list. You need to go pick up some skills on how to work with positive and negative numbers, right? So again, this is the value of showing your steps, because if you don't understand something, well, that's what you need to improve, and then everything will get much better. Okay, so 1 minus 3 is -2. And by the way, if you are really at this level of math, where you're like, yes, I'm doing a lot of order of operations problem, this is kind of like pre-algebra. So you can check out my pre-algebra course. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description of this video, or my math skills rebuilder course, right? Matter of fact, my math skills rebuilder course, I start with basic math, so real world basic stuff like fractions, percent, to include order of operations, decimals, just basic number operations, and then I teach you a ton of algebra, geometry, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of resources. So just make sure you get the help that you need. Just don't leave this video not knowing something. Okay, now let's talk about this -3 squared, because this part of the problem is going to confuse a lot of people. Now, when I created this problem, I purposely put in things that I know that students confuse a lot, right? So here is the problem with this, -3 squared. Sometimes students think of this as -3 squared. They think this is what this means. So -3 squared would be equal to a +9. So this can be easily confused as 4 plus 9, okay? That's not the situation. So what we have is 4 minus 9 right there, okay? So 4 minus 9, why is that the case, and why is it not 4 plus 9? Well, I'm going to explain this right now. Okay, so big difference here. Negative 3 squared does not mean the same thing as negative 3. Negative 3, no, that's a terrible negative 3. I could do better than that. Negative 3 squared like this. These two things do not mean the same. This negative 3 squared, the exponent is only working on this base, which is 3. This is the opposite of 3 squared, so this is negative 9. Negative 3 squared means take negative 3 and multiply it by itself. A negative times a negative is a positive. That's positive 9. Very, very common error. So here, again, this is going to be 4 minus 3 squared, which is a positive 9. Okay, so here we go. That is the result of doing that step. And now what we need to do is continue to work inside of these brackets down here, and then we'll talk about what negative 2 cubed means in just 1 second. So let's go ahead and continue on. And what we have now, actually, let's just go ahead and explain what we have to do is what? We have subtraction and subtraction, but this right here, okay, I'm kind of going a little bit fast. I'm going to slow things down here. This is really multiplication. So this is obviously subtraction, okay? But technically, what's going on right here is multiplication. So what comes first when it comes to the order of operations? It's multiplication, right? So PEMDAS. So we're still inside these brackets. There's no more powers. So do we have multiplication and division? We do have multiplication, but it's not that really obvious that we do have multiplication right here. But see, there really is a 1 outside of this parentheses. So this is like a negative 1 times a negative 9. So when you have a negative of a negative, a negative of a negative, like this, negative of a negative 9, or like a negative of a negative 3, typically you won't see it written this way because it's like two negatives, so that these will be in parentheses. This is negative signs, or another way you can think of them as being opposite. So this is like the opposite of a negative 9, which is positive 9, or the opposite of negative 3, which is a positive 3, or negative 1 times negative 9. A negative times a negative is positive. So all of this is going to be a positive 9. All right, so again, we're going to do multiplication before subtraction when it comes to the order of operations. And then we'll talk about what negative 2 cubed means here in a second. All right, so here we go. So now we have 4 minus 9 plus 9 over negative 8. Okay, so negative 8 is the result of negative 2 cubed. So what does negative 2 cubed mean? Well, it means to take negative 2 and multiply it by itself 3 times, right? So that's negative 2 cubed. So negative times negative is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. So you got to be very careful here. So negative 2 cubed is negative 8. All right, so we are almost done, and hopefully at this point of the problem, it's not going to be that much more or that difficult for anyone with basic math skills. But let's go ahead and take the next step, which of course is having you quickly subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, I definitely need your support. Matter of fact, I need your help, and I am not shy to ask for your help. And you shouldn't be shy to ask for help as well when it comes to mathematics, right? So if you're struggling with math, you're like, I'm not good at math, I don't understand. Well, have you looked for help? Now, if you are a student, where should you go get help from? Well, you should go immediately to your teacher. Now, a lot of you are going to be saying, well, if my teacher was so good, I would understand them, I wouldn't need help. Well, I get that. Even if your teacher, if you don't connect with their teaching style, still get in communication with your teacher. Say, hey, teacher, what don't I understand? And they'll, tell you. They should look at your work, and they should be able to give you like a quick diagnostic kind of assessment of what's going on. Well, you don't understand fractions, positive, negative numbers, da 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 da. So you can get that kind of list, and hopefully your teacher can help you out. But if you don't, if you need to find someone else to teach you this stuff, at least you have something to work on. Okay, the worst thing in math is to be like, I don't understand. And this is the case when I used to tutor many, many years ago. I would try to, ask, hey, what don't you know? And no, I had to kind of assess a student. But if you're like, well, I just don't get math, that's just too broad and general. That's why you need to write out your work step by step. Okay, but for me, I need to build my YouTube channel step by step, and I need your help. There's no way I can grow my channel unless people like yourself say, all right, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I'll go ahead and subscribe. And if you are a subscriber, thank you so much. Make sure to hit that notification bell as well so you can get my latest videos. And for those of you that really do need help beyond this video or beyond what you can find online, you definitely got to check out my full main math courses. I go way beyond what I do on YouTube. I really break down the topics and we go through basic examples to more advanced examples in each respective area of mathematics. So you can find all that information in the description. So let's go and continue on because there's really not much more to do here. All right, so remember, we're going to treat the numerator as its own problem and the denominator as its own problem. We're already down to one number in the denominator, but we're not done with the numerator. Okay, so it's basically its own problem. And when we think of PEMDAS, remember, we're still on this parentheses step. Okay, so we're just kind of working inside of the grouping symbols. Again, it's not just these parentheses, it's brackets as well. Okay, so we're still in here, but this is going to be pretty simple. So we have subtraction and addition. So we could really turn this into an addition problem. So 4 minus 9 is the same thing as 4 plus negative 9. So now we just have to add these three numbers, and negative 9 plus a positive 9. I'm sorry, it's 4 minus 9 plus 9. So 4 minus 9 is the same thing as 4 plus a negative 9. So negative 9 plus 9 is 0. So that's going to be 4. Well, let me write it out like this. So 4 plus negative 9 plus 9. This is 0. So we end up with just 4 in our numerator over negative 8 in our denominator, but we don't want to leave our answers like this. We want to fully simplify, so this is a negative fraction. So 4/8 is the same thing as 1/2, but this is negative, so the final answer is negative 1/2. Okay, let's go ahead and put our calculators away and figure out what the answer is to this problem here. So we have 5 divided by parentheses 8 times 4 divided by 16 and parentheses squared. What is this equal to? Well, hopefully this is not too difficult of a problem. But if you don't understand the order of operations, unfortunately, you're going to get this wrong. But I suspect a lot of you know what you're doing here, and that is fantastic. Matter of fact, put your answer into the comment section. I'm going to show you the correct answer here in just 1 second, and then we are going to review how to properly use the order of operations to figure this problem out. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. It really is my true passion to try to make learning math as easy as possible. So if you need assistance in mathematics, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, don't forget to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the answer. If you're not ready to see it just quite yet, just put this video on pause, but let's go ahead and see the answer to this problem. The correct answer is 5/4 or 5/4. Now, if you wrote that as a mixed number fraction, that's fantastic. If you actually did the division and turn this into a decimal, that's cool as well. But this is the answer that I'm looking for. This is the easiest, most simplest way to express the final answer. Okay, now if you didn't get this right, no problem. I'm going to explain exactly how to do this problem. But if you did do this right, that is fantastic. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you a nice little happy face, an A plus, a 100%, and multiple stars. So you can brag to your friends and family that indeed you are a professional certified expert in the order of operations. They'll be extremely impressed with that information indeed. All right, let's go ahead and get into this right now. So this is one of the most basic kind of math concepts that I think a lot of students, don't fully appreciate or don't fully understand. Let's quickly review it real quick. All right, so you can see here I have a phrase. Now, just as a little aside, most people, from my experience, and I've been doing this for decades, are familiar with this phrase here. Now, there's other phrases that are effectively are communicating the order of operations, but this is by far probably the most popular phrase. It's PEMDAS, and there is a little mnemonic, which is a little kind of memory aid, a little way you can kind of remember this phrase, and that is Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Now I don't have an Aunt Sally, but I don't know what Aunt Sally did, but yeah, that's the phrase. I can tell you right now, many of your great grandparents were using this, little mnemonic and PEMDAS way back in the good old days. All right. But what does it mean, though? Well, it means this. We have to follow this as a checklist. Okay, because we're dealing with various operations here. Now, what is a mathematical operation? Well, uh, when you could take two numbers, what can you do with two numbers? Well, we can add them, we can subtract them, multiply, divide, we can even take powers. These are examples of mathematical operations, okay? Unlike medical operations, we have an order to, um, uh, you know, doing problems that have multiple different type of operations in them. So here we have division, multiplication, division. We have um, powers and parentheses. We need to know where to start, right? Because if we just start in some random place, we're going to get different values. So we need to know the exact checklist here of what to do, and that's PEMDAS, okay? All right, let's quickly go through it. P stands for parentheses, okay? But it's not just parentheses like these parentheses here. Of course, it means that as well, but we're talking about grouping symbols like brackets or little squiggly brackets like this. Any kind of uh, notation that is grouping numbers together, like parentheses, that's where we're going to start. Okay. Now, of course, there can be more than one set of parentheses in a problem. In this particular problem, there's obviously just one. So that's what P stands for. E stands for exponent. So if I have a power like 2 to the 4th power, this little 4 is an exponent. This entire thing is a power. So you want to think of E as powers, things like 2 to the 4th. We're going to want to do those next. Now, the next thing we're going to be doing is a group. We're going to do M and D or M. This is a very confused part of the order of operations. So M stands for multiplication, D stands for division. So what you want to be looking at here is from left to right. Okay, you want to do whatever occurs from left to right. So if we see multiplication, then division, that's what we want to do. And of course, in our problem, that's what we have. But if you see division and then multiplication, then you're going to want to do division first. Okay, again, you're looking at the problem from left to right. And then we have A and S, which stands for addition and subtraction. And we're going to do it the same way as multiplication and division from left to right. Okay, so this is what you need to keep in mind when you have a problem that has all sorts of operations going on. And technically, the directions to this problem could be something like simplify the numeric expression, right? Numeric expression. Here, this big old thing is trying to express one number. What is that number? Well, this is what we want to try to do. We want to simplify this problem down into one value. And we're going to do that by following the order of operations PEMDAS. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started now. If you forget what PEMDAS is, just write that down on a piece of paper here and you kind of follow me through this problem. Okay, so PEMDAS is what's the first uh, letter here? It's PEM, P, not a PEM, PEMDAS, right? So the first thing I'm going to be like, okay, are there any parentheses? Clearly there are parentheses right there. So what I want to do is go inside those parentheses and start working. Now, this particular problem has a set of parentheses. Some problems do not have parentheses. Other problems actually have more than one parentheses. In other words, I can have brackets here, and this problem can continue. So you want to work to the innermost parentheses, okay? And another little comment here is, this problem that I'm doing is kind of a basic problem when it comes to the order of operations. You really need to get good at this. So you want to challenge yourself by doing more challenging problems. But anyways, we do have a set of parentheses, so we're going to focus on what's inside of the parentheses first. Okay, so we have 8 times 4 divided by 16. So that's what we're going to be thinking about next. Are there any powers inside the parenthesis? No, there isn't. Is there any multiplication and division? Yes, there is. And now we're going to be thinking, what comes first from left to right? Well, multiplication does, right? 8 times 4. So that's what we're going to be doing next. All right, so now we have this problem divided by 8 times 4 divided by 6. We haven't even done anything. We're just kind of reviewing in our mind where to start. So now we're going to start with 8 times 4. Okay, so 8 times 4, I know all of you are experts in multiplication. 8 times 4 is 32, so that's the answer. Now, when you're doing this work, just take it one step at a time. Okay, there's a couple different reasons for that. One, so you can track and audit yourself. If you really want to know how to increase the probability of you getting the correct answer in mathematics, it's by taking a step and double checking yourself. You want to be a little bit like, suspicious of your work, excuse me, and you want to grade yourself. You'll be like, okay, did I make a mistake? Where's the error? Because I can guarantee you, you will catch errors, right? So you can only check yourself if you're being neat and organized and taking one step at a time. All right, so 8 times 4, 32. So now we have 32 divided by 16 squared. All right, but we're not done with the parentheses, right? There's still stuff to do inside the parentheses. So pretty clearly, we have to take care of 32 divided by 16, which of course is going to be 2. Right? 32 divided by 16 is 2. So this is where we're at right now. So we have 5 divided by 2 squared. Now, we still have our parentheses, but there's nothing more, there's nothing else to do inside the parentheses. So now you can start looking on the outside of those parentheses. And what do we have? We have a power, right? So let's go back to PEMDAS. So at this point, we took care of everything inside the parentheses. So now we're looking, are there any powers? Yes, indeed we do. So we're going to address this right next to squared. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you to address subscribing to my channel and possibly hitting that notification button. If you're getting value from my content, it really does help me out if you subscribe. I've been on YouTube for quite some time and I'm a consistent, I post consistently pretty much every day. And I'm trying to cover a wide range of math topics from basic to advanced because I just love teaching math that much. So if you're getting some sort of value out of my videos, please consider subscribing. That little gesture goes a long way for me. But let's continue on with the problem. Okay, so here we have 5 divided by 2 squared. So this is what we need to figure out next. So 2 squared means what? It means 2 times 2, right? So 2 times 2, of course, is 4. So now we have 5 divided by 4, and there's only one other operation left to do, and that's, of course, division. So 5 divided by 4, we want to express that as a fraction. You just don't want to be like, well, I don't know what to do here. Well, this is 5 divided by 4. This is perfectly okay. But if you felt like, 5 divided by 4, if you need to go like, if you're thinking this, that's okay as well. Okay. But if you just said, oh, I'm going to write this as a fraction, this is the most ideal way. But if you wrote this as division like that, that's okay as well, right? So you just did division. Let's say, okay, let's see here. 4 goes into 5 1 times. 1 times 4 is 4. Isn't arithmetic so much fun, right? Then you have 1 as a remainder, so you can think of this as 1 and 1/4. This is what we call a mixed number fraction. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5 or 4. So this is a mixed number fraction. This is a proper fraction. And if I write something like this, 2/3, this is a proper fraction. This is an improper fraction, excuse me. When the denominator, okay, this is the bottom number in a fraction, is bigger than the numerator, this is what we call a proper fraction. When the numerator, this top number, is larger than the bottom number, this is an improper fraction. And these type of fractions we can write as mixed numbers by doing this division like so. But I'm going to suggest that you don't do this, okay? I'll just give you a little bit of insight from grading maybe possibly 10 million quizzes. Well, not that many, but you get it, right? So I've had countless students, they'll have the right answer, 5/4, but then they'll go ahead and turn that into a mixed number and they'll give me like 1 and 1/3. All right, so the answer is 1 and 1/4. They'll turn in this answer, and then when they see that they got like -10, they'll be very upset and they'll be like, "What are you doing, Mr. Math Teacher? I had the problem right. Look, it's 5/4." But I said, "Well, yes, you did, but you gave me this answer. In fact, you did it right. You had this answer, but when you did this division, you wanted to be a math superhero, you made an error." Okay, so unless you are asked to do this, you need to know how to do it. Okay, you need to know how to write improper fractions as mixed numbers. I'm not saying to do that. What I'm trying to say is don't volunteer to do that, okay? But when it comes to fractions, what you do need to do is make sure your fractions are fully simplified. So 5, for example, if you had 50 over 40, you wouldn't write your final answer there. You must write it fully reduced, 5 over 4. Okay, so one of the most common reasons behind all math mistakes is an improper use of the order of operations. And that's what this little video is going to be about. We're going to cover the order of operations, kind of do a quick little lesson. And by doing so, we need to review this little phrase right here or acronym called PEMDAS. So these letters are effectively a checklist that we need to follow in order to do a math problem that has various mathematical operations. So in math, things like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, these are called mathematical operators, and we need to do the correct order in terms of a math problem with multiple or different mathematical operators. So for example, in this problem, we have subtraction, multiplication, division, we have powers, we have a fraction going on here. And if we don't do this problem in the exact right order, we will get the wrong answer. Again, this is very likely the most common reason people get math problems wrong. All right, now if you want to try this problem, put away your calculator, and the actual problem is 3 times 2 squared divided by 3 times 2 in brackets minus 5, and this is the numerator of a fraction, and the denominator of this fraction is 8 divided by 4 times 2. So if you can figure this out, put your answer into the comment section. I'll show you the correct answer in just 1 second. And then, of course, I'm going to walk through and kind of give you a little mini lesson on the order of operations, and we're going to thoroughly review this PEMDAS phrase in just 1 second. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And if you need help learning math, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, so one more time, here is our problem. And this problem is going to require a considerable amount of steps. So if you really want to check your understanding for the order of operations, take out a piece of paper and a pencil and just, take your time with this problem and see if you can get the right answer. And let's take a look at the correct answer. The correct answer is -3/4. Now, if you got this right, well, indeed, it appears that you do understand the order of operations, and that is fantastic. But if you're still not quite sure, or if you didn't get the right answer, well, let's go ahead and review the order of operations and PEMDAS right now. Okay, let's talk about the order of operations. And many of you out there know it by this acronym PEMDAS or PEMDAS. I'll get into that in a second, but I'd have to say that the order of operations is an area where many students think they understand it better than they actually do. So we're going to take a look at a practice problem, and here it is. We're going to go through and simplify this using the order of operations just to kind of review some of the things that you really need to understand. I would say, again, that this is an area where it just trips up so many math students. So if you can really strengthen your understanding of the order of operations, just do a quick review, make sure you truly understand it, then that's going to help you out in math for sure. So before we get started, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of Tablet Class Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher. And over the last several years, I've constructed many online math classes to include several middle and, again, high school math classes. So the order of operations is typically taught at the middle school level. It's really kind of honed in there. So if you're in that range, middle school range, you might want to check out my pre-algebra class, for example. But nevertheless, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video to my math learning program, and you could see, if there's a course there that might be right for you. Also, I'm going to invite you to become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. I already have hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel, posting stuff all the time. I love to teach math, so if you like my teaching style, probably already have a lot of stuff there that can help you out through your course. And again, if you like this video, please consider giving a big thumbs up. All right, so let's get into the problem. All right, so here is the problem, okay? And I'm not going to recite it, but here it is. And I would suggest that all of you out there, pause the video and just go ahead and knock this problem out. Okay, see if you can do it on your own fully simplified. Don't use your calculator, just a pencil and a piece of paper. Again, if you're watching this video, you're certainly interested in the order of operations. That either means that you're learning it for the first time, you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you're like struggling with it. Okay, so go ahead and try this problem, even if you're not sure what you're doing, because you might very well be making one of the common errors I know you're talking about. And again, I'm going to highlight these errors and these common confusions, if you will, so you can avoid them. All right, so let's get into the problem. But before we do that, let's talk about this PEMDAS, right? So PEMDAS is it's our guide, okay? It's the instructions on how to apply the order of operations. Now, what does this mean? Okay, let's go back up here real quick. Order of operations. This means something, right? Well, in mathematics, operations are things like this: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, powers, things like this. These are example of mathematical operations. These are mathematical operators, okay? And we need to follow a particular order because if you look here, our problem, okay, we have all kinds of things going on. We got multiplication, subtraction, division, powers, fractions. You know, it's like, well, what do we do first, okay? And if you don't follow the correct order, or you're going to get the wrong problem. So order definitely makes a difference, and PEMDAS is our directions, okay? It is the order we want to follow, okay? But just to kind of emphasize this, there is a very specific order to simplifying expressions that have all these mathematical operators, some or all, okay? All right, so let's get down to this PEMDAS here again, all right? So let's just review what this means. Now, some of you might know this. There's all kinds of cute little phrases out there. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is probably one of the most famous. I think I probably learned that many decades ago when I was learning the order of operations. But your teacher might use another one, but almost everyone has some sort of mnemonic, okay? So if you don't have one, go ahead and use please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So remember PEMDAS, okay? Now, what does this stand for? Well, P, let's just do a quick review, stands for parentheses, okay? So you're going to do things, we want to do things first, okay, that are in parentheses or brackets or even like these little squiggly kind of guys, these brackets. These are called grouping symbols. So this little PEMDAS is telling us what to start first. We're going to look for these guys first, and then we're going to kind of go from left to right. We're going to just check to see these operators. So this is our order. Okay, we're going to start here, and we're going to proceed this way, kind of go through a little checklist. Okay, so P is everything inside parentheses. Okay, we're going to be looking for parentheses or brackets or little squiggly brackets, and we're going to do everything inside them. Okay. Now, after we've kind of done that, and again, there's a lot of variations, different type of practice problems involved in here. This is just a basic overview of this PEMDAS. Okay, so E, what does E stand for? Okay, well, E is really, it stands for exponent. So you can kind of think of it like this, 2 cubed. This little E is an exponent, but really just think of E as powers, okay? We're going to do any powers next, okay? So like 2 cubed or 4 squared, things like that. That's what E stands for, okay? We're going to do powers next. And then we have M and D. So M and D, this is multiplication, and this is division, okay? Let's just go ahead and put the rest in here. This is addition, and this is subtraction. Now, this is probably one of the big areas where students get confused on PEMDAS is we need to look at multiplication and division and addition and subtraction kind of as little bundles here. So we have P by itself, E by itself. Now, multiplication and division. So what we're going to do here is we're going to multiply, okay, and then divide, or we're going to divide, then multiply, whatever we see first from left to right. Now, many students confuse this because they think to themselves, oh, I have to do multiplication all the time before division. I must do multiplication all the time before division, and they go over here, they do multiplication um, in the wrong order. Okay, so this is a big area of misunderstanding. Okay, it's whatever you see first. So if you see multiplication before division, do it that way. If you see division and then multiplication, then that's what you're going to do. And same thing applies for A and S, addition and subtraction. You're going to do addition or subtraction or addition, whatever you see first, from left to right. Okay, so hopefully this has kind of cleared up a lot of your confusion, if you had any, or strengthen your understanding of PEMDAS. Now let's get to the problem here. And so we can kind of see what's going on. Now we have one big old fraction, right? We have this numerator and this denominator. So what you want to do, the fraction bar in and of itself is kind of like a grouping symbol. So what you want to do is work independently of both the numerator and denominator. In other words, simplify the numerator down to one value and then work on the denominator, simplify that down to one value, and then you can kind of simplify from there. Okay, so you never want to kind of intermingle your work. So you can kind of, depending on your skill level or your practice, you can do more than one step at a time. I would suggest not doing any more than, say, 2 steps at a time, okay, when you're working a problem down. But whatever you're doing, make sure you show your work so your teacher can follow and you can kind of review and make sure you did everything correct, okay? So with that being said, let's go ahead and just focus in on the numerator for now, okay? So we'll deal with the denominator here in a second. So let's take a look at the numerator, and we're using PEMDAS, okay? So if you want to write that down, go ahead, and I'm not going to bring it down with us all the time, but put that down on your piece of paper to the side here so we can just kind of use it as a guide. So the first thing is I'm looking, well, let me just do it here. What the heck? PEMDAS. So I'm focused in on P, okay? So are there any parentheses? Yes, there are, okay? Remember parentheses, brackets, we call grouping symbols. So here, right here, this part of the problem is a pair of brackets. So that indicates that we have to do everything inside those brackets first. So let's go ahead and do that. And the way I'm going to show that is I'm just going to simply rewrite the numerator. Okay, 3 times 2 squared, and be very careful here, divided by bracket. Now 3 times 2, I'm going to do what's inside the parentheses. That is 6, okay, minus 5, all right? So go ahead and rewrite the denominator, 8 divided by 4 times 2. Now, you're like, boy, that's a lot of writing. I could take a couple of steps at once. Again, this is where students get in trouble in math. They become impatient or like, all right, I'm going to do this step, that step, and this step, and this step. And it's a noble, kind of gesture. You're like, hey, I'm going to save time and space on my paper. But it more often than not, it messes students up, okay? Take a step, maybe 2 at most, okay? Look to see after you're done, okay? Look at your work. Make sure you copied the problem down correctly. So 3 times 2 squared divided by 3 times 2 is 6. That was what I was supposed to do, minus 5. 8 divided by 4 times 2. Boom, I'm happy. Okay, so now let's continue to focus on the numerator. And let me write our little PEMDAS here. All right, so are there any more parentheses? No. So now there's this bracket here. You're saying, well, there's the brackets. Yeah, but really when there's nothing else to do, you can simply just drop those brackets. We'll just leave it there for a second, but there's no more brackets. So now let's go and check for E. Okay, are there any powers? Yes, there are powers. Okay, right here, 2 squared. Okay. Now, let me just make sure that I didn't. This problem is 2 squared, not 2 cubed. Just want to double check. All right, now, this is another big area of confusion. Here's the mistake that I would see thousands of times through the years as a teacher. I would see this mistake. Oh, a student encounter this. They would go 3 times 2 is 6. 6 squared, 36. That's what they would do. Totally wrong because they're not doing powers first, okay? So that's what we got to do. We have to go 2 squared, which is what? 2 times 2. So that's going to be 4. So let's just walk it down like this. 3 times 4 divided by, now we could just drop this brackets here. It's a little redundant. There's nothing more to do here. Divided by 6 minus 5 over 8 divided by 4 times 2. Okay, so we did our exponent. Okay, so again, I'm still focused on the numerator. Okay, I'm focusing here. I'll deal with the denominator in a second. So are there any more powers? I don't see any more powers, right? So we're good there. So now I'm going to look at multiplication and division. Remember, I'm going to look at this as a bundle, right? So is there any multiplication and division? Yes, there is. This is multiplication, and then I got division here. So which comes first, okay? Well, multiplication comes first from left to right. So we're going to go ahead and write that down there. So 3 times 4 is 12 divided by 6 minus 5. And then I have here 8 divided by 4 times 2. Okay, so now we're really getting there, right? Getting more and more simplified. And I'm going to write this down here. 12 divided by 6 minus 5 over 8 divided by 4 times 2. All right, so let's get our little PEMDAS out again. PEMDAS. So let's go back to our M and D. Just because we just did a multiplication doesn't mean that we're going to move on to addition and subtraction. We have to exhaust all situations that involve multiplication and division. So we're looking, again, I'm focused on the numerator. Is there any multiplication or division? Yes, there is division going on here. So 12 divided by 6 is going to be 2. So this is going to be 2 minus 5, okay, over what's going to go on in the denominator. So this is a good opportunity to deal with the denominator right now. So let's kind of start working on that, okay? So 2 minus 5, we know our final answer here is going to be what? What is 2 minus 5? Little pop quiz for you. So if you said 3, you would be perfectly incorrect, okay? It's not 3, it is negative 3. So watch your positive and negative number rules, okay? And that's what I'm talking about. If you made that error, then you got to slow down and just keep focused on all the little details of this problem. So let's focus in on the denominator. So I have, do I have any parentheses? Nope, I do not have any parentheses. Do I have any exponents? Nope, no exponents. Do I have multiplication, division? Yes, that's what I have, division and multiplication. So this time I have division before multiplication. See, a lot of students would make this error. Let's just do this wrong here for a second. What if we did the multiplication first? We would get 8 divided by 8, which is going to be 1, right? So if I did multiplication and then division, okay, it would be, the denominator value would be 1. But that's not what I'm supposed to do, okay? I'm supposed to do whatever comes first from left to right. So division comes first, so I have to do 8 divided by 4. So that's going to be 2, okay? And then I have this multiplication, so 2 times 2, all right? So 2 times 2 is obviously going to be 4. This is my final answer. But you can see if I would have went the other route, if I did multiplication first, I would have had 8 divided by 8, or 1. Okay, you would have gotten the wrong answer. There is a very specific, order that we have to take when we're dealing with all these mathematical operators. That's why we have the order of operations, and thank goodness our Aunt Sally is helping us out here, right? So please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, but I think Aunt Sally sometimes didn't fully explain how she wants us to use this recipe book. Like, hey, again, some of the biggest misunderstandings, I think, is with the grouping of multiplication and division, addition and subtraction, again, left to right, left to right. All right, so hopefully you kind of picked up. That's why I'm going to do you to do this problem first, because I wanted to see if you were going to make any errors, made any of these errors. If you made those errors, okay, I'm glad you made those errors while watching this video, because you should learn from them. Okay, just because you made a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Okay, what's critical is, are you learning? Did you understand why you made the mistake you did, and then did you correct it? All right, that's the most important part here. But as a math teacher, of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, years and years and years and years and years of grading tests, quizzes, homeworks, etc., etc. Okay, I can tell you right now, this is definitely the top. If I had to say, pick the top 5 areas where all math students make mistakes, I would say order of operations is, right up there. One of the top ones. Okay, so anyways, hopefully this little review, got you on the right path in terms of order operations. Just because we're just working with numbers and not variables or anything else like that, don't minimize, the focus and effort, and concentration level you have to have, okay, with order of operations. Again, show your work no more than, say, 2 steps at a time, okay? Right now, when you're starting to learn this, just one step, nice and neat, double check, just work the problem, kind of whittle it all the way down until you have your final answer. Okay, so I hope this video helped you out, and if that's the case, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, if you need additional help in basic math, check out these 2 courses right here. So the first is my Math Foundations course. This is a quick review of basic math. Now, if you want to review basic math, algebra, and geometry, then check out my Math Skills Rebuilder course. I'm going to leave links to both of these courses in the description of this video. All right, so with all that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your math adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.